And yes, and I wanted to say that we are all incredibly honored that Rabbi Rachel Gartner is with us tonight. And I'm going to begin sharing the screen so we go directly to our piut, the one that we discuss every single um, every single evening at Selihot. Adona Selihot, as we have said, a piut that is anonymous, perhaps because the God that offers forgiveness is in each of us and is for every one of us. And for tonight, we are honoring letter Kuf or Kof, depending on the variations that you have. And this amazing phrase, Koreh Hadorot, the one that announces the generations. Uh, Perhaps imagining that the generations that passed, the generations that are, and the generations that will be. This is one of the qualities of God. God, the one that can see the future, can see the past, can see the present. So if you remember, the piyut goes in the pizmon, the refrain, Chatanu lefanecha rachem alenu, Chatanu lefanecha rachem alenu. And we're going to begin with the pay. I see some in here, so that's good. פועל ישועות צופה עתידות קורא הדורות רוכב ערבות שומע תפילות תמים דעות חטאנו לפניך Rachem alenu. Let me tell you a little bit of our presenter, of our teacher for tonight. She's our dear friend, first of all, but she's also the director of Jewish life at Georgetown University and faculty lecturer since 2011. In 2019, she joined the leadership team of In Your Shoes, a project in theatrical performance and dialogue of Georgetown's The Lab for Global Performance and Politics. She is the co-author of Moving Traditions' nationally acclaimed Rosh Chodesh, It's a Girl Thing sourcebook, and has authored numerous opinion pieces appearing in the Huffington Post, The Hill, and the Washington Post, National Jewish Media, CNN, NPR, you get it. She is a fellow of the distinguished cross-denominational Marshall Mayer Rabbinical Fellowship of Congregation Bnei Jeshurun in New York City. And she lives here in Washington, D.C., with her fiction author spouse David and their absolutely perfect son Reuben. And I could tell you more about her loving chocolate and other things, but I would let her tell you that if she wishes. In the meantime, Rachel, I don't know if you would like me to help to allow you to share the screen. Would that be a good thing?
That'd be great. Great. Thank you.
Fantastic. So here I am. I'm going to make you a co-host, and I'm going to also make sure that I spotlight you for everyone. And the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you. I'm laughing because you clearly have my Georgetown bio, and Georgetown wants to make you sound like a big muckety muck, but they also want you to be relatable. So I got to put in the CNN and the chocolate, but they're all, I guess, a part of me. So anyway, thank you for that overly lovely introduction. I wanted to, I'm stalling a drop to get my screen share up. I wanted to just share this lovely kuf for a moment. And yeah, did I do it? Okay. I also just wanted to start by saying that my father is in hospice right now. And the reason I bring this up is three reasons. One is because I realize you may not get me at you're not going to get me at my most polished and erudite, and for that I'm sorry. But I hope you'll get me at my more vulnerable and honest. And I thought maybe that was still worth. I almost canceled, but I'm hoping that there's something to offer from that place. Just as much, if not more so, I hope. And also because I think a lot of what I felt like sharing today about kaf kuf kof, I'm living right now. So in this spirit, I offer this teaching in honor of my father's journey right now. I'm happy to share that with you. So kuf kof kaf. I love this. I used to dance, and I don't know if you can see me as well as my screen share. Can you see me what I'm doing with my hands here? So you know, this beautiful letter, which Lawrence Kushner, in his book of letters, immediately points out. Let me stop the share and share a different piece with you so you can see Kushner's own words here. The bottom of the kuf is a person calling holy so they can join themselves to their creator. So this line, right? And again, as this dancer, I love the feeling of that. Calling up holy. The top line is sheltering, and it's reaching down, and that's the Holy One, God. Nothing can be Kodesh, holy, without the voice, whole of kuf, to say it is. So Kodesh and Kol both begin with the letter kuf. And for me, Kodesh, holiness, is something so ethereal, but also something that we really try to strive for. We say, experience holiness or be holy in our lives. And a voice can be so ethereal and also so powerful and so essential simply for the very, very human, basic, imminent need to communicate. So that combination for me is very powerful from the get-go. And I wanted to thank Lawrence Kushner right away for giving me for this whole book, but also it's a springboard for which I'm going to play a little bit with kuf today. So kuf is it's 100, right? It represents 100. It's a big, round, full number. But I wanted to look at kuf through the concepts of kadosh and kol. So there's a couple things missing here. But yeah, let me see where that text is that I wanted to start with. Defining Kodesh. Kodesh, to be cut off, separated. Jastrow is an excellent dictionary used in rabbinical school and beyond for biblical and some rabbinic texts. This separated quality is probably the basic meaning of the Hebrew word kadosh, much like the English word distinguished, which can mean both separate and special. Kadosh means separate and begins by meaning separate and ends by meaning special. Set aside moves into special. Set aside moves into sacred, holy, elevated. Steinsaltz says the root meaning of the concept of kadosh, holy, in the holy language is separation. It implies the apartness and remoteness of something. The holy that is that which is out of bounds, untouchable, altogether beyond grasp, cannot be understood or even defined, being so totally unlike anything else. To be holy in essence is to be distinctly other. Interesting. Is this a new definition for anyone, or is this sort of, you've heard this before? New? I guess I can't really ask you to. Okay, I'll just keep going. So in Judaism, the most separate, special, holy, elevated, sacred, distinct, right, is, where do we start with? In Vayikra it says, Ki kadosh ani Adonai Elohechem. I, the Lord, am holy, right? Our concept of holiness is rooted in, starts in, and draws down from this vision of God as holy, as separate, as special. This is a fabulous excerpt from an academic text by this guy down here, Isaac Calvert. And again, I said this is not my most polished. I'm just sort of giving you my notes here. In every case, the concept of holiness is incoherent without the concept of God in Judaism. In Judaism, holiness is inherent to God's character, nature, and paradigm. Even God's very existence is inexorably linked to the concept of holiness in rabbinic Judaism. Holiness is not a symbol that represents God, much less a separate entity that takes God's place. It is instead comprised of God's very essence. Within this system, holiness is so closely associated with God, so inseparable from God, that the two reach a near synonym with one another. Taken in this light, to say that God is kadosh tells us nothing whatsoever about God. So that's interesting, I think. We're going to keep going before we break that down a little bit. But it's not essential, and this article goes on to say in other cultures, holiness is not always attached to the God idea, but for us, it is. So there's this wonderful midrash on the line, I am holy. It says, we saw it here, I the Lord your God am holy, ki kadosh ani Adonai Elohechem. Kadosh, Sifra Kedushim, on this commentary says, perhaps the meaning is, if you sanctify me, I'm holy. And if not, I'm holy. It is therefore written, for I am holy. I remain in my holiness, whether or not I'm sanctified by humanity. I love this, right? It says, I'm holy. Look, there's nothing you can do or not do about it. This is my essence. And yet, what is so powerful for me is we use our kol, our voice, all the time in our tradition to declare that God is holy. Even if God doesn't need it. Even if it's almost a tautology. Ata kadosh v'shimcha kadosh u'kadoshim b'chol yom yahalu chasela baruch ata Adonai ha'el hakadosh. Right? God, you're holy. What's that about? Why do we do that? Hold on, I'm throwing out a bunch of questions and we'll play with them in a moment a little more. We know that God is holy. We know from the rest of the text in Leviticus that it says, Kedoshim Tehiyu. Kedoshim Tehiyu. You shall be holy to the people. You shall be set aside, for I am holy, and by identifying with me, you shall be set aside and elevated in this particular way. So the text, Torah suggests that we can somehow be holy, even though it's this other thing that is so beyond, but all of a sudden it just got a little closer because we can somehow be there. And then Shabbat, we learn, is also holy. Vayivra Elohim et vayikadesh oto, right? Vayivarech Elohim et yom hashvi'i vayikadesh oto. God sanctifies the seventh day. A day is now holy. So time is holy, we are holy, but God is holy, but it's other, but it's us, but it's not. Okay. These are my little notes to myself. And I write to myself, and now to you, but there is a distinction. There are, after all, two words, two concepts. There is God and there is holy. There is something similar but distinct. And what is it? So I feel we can't describe this kadosh. We can't call it, we almost can't voice it, but we can experience it. At least I know I can. And I believe all of us can. I know I do. That's what I mean. Eliade, who I love to quote and never, I'm sure I'm saying his name right, described the sacred as something which manifests itself unto us. This philosopher, Jean-Luc Nancy, contemporary philosopher, writes, the sacred is something which encounters us, manifests, encounters. We can't voice it, name it, maybe describe it, but that maybe it's the kind of thing we know when we see. So begin to think about, what is that like for you? So these are my notes too, that I'll read to you. We make a big deal about distinguishing in our tradition, about kodesh from chol, not kol now, chol. Kodesh from holy from regular. I'm just saying, think about Havdalah. We talk about that a lot. Mavdil ben kodesh l'chol, mavdil ben l'chol. We keep separating. And I write here, just as I never really liked the distinction between ordinary people and extraordinary people. I mean, who is ordinary? I hate the term an unlikely hero, because what's so unlikely about an ordinary person being a hero? If you ask me, most of the time living or living well through an ordinary days and acts of heroism. So it always bums me out when people say, oh, the unsuspected hero. Come on. Have you seen people and what we live through? And so I write here, in some ways, the distinction is false. We just don't realize it until a curtain is lifted, until it manifests itself to us, until it encounters us. Sometimes a sense of something holy happening just breaks through the moment I'm in. A sense of the presence of the extraordinary dwelling in the ordinary reaches out and grabs me. That line just kind of happens like a lightning bolt. And I experience the moment suddenly as extraordinary, as if the veil has been removed. I remember a time when my 5-year-old, who is now 15, was on the scooter down the block going to school. I was walking him to school, but he was in front of me, and the sun was just so radiant and the leaves were falling. And I was like, I just wanted to yell, Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. It was just so obvious and so full and so complete. When the veil is lifted, we feel like yelling it. Yes, I wanted to say, is anyone seeing this? Is anyone seeing this? And indeed, this is what we do. It's what the angels do. They call to one another, holy, 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 the Lord of hosts. Malo kol haaretz kavodo. There's holiness everywhere. The Ramban in the Middle Ages said, people, we say when we're in this state of awareness, the Hasidic tradition would call this an experience of dveikut, of clinging, where the holiness of the divine and our experience connect, and we feel connected, like in the kuf. You imagine, it doesn't touch in the kuf, but if you can imagine. And that connection, that cleaving, is a state of awareness. And the Ramban says people who have reached the spiritual level of constant dveikut live in eternity even while in this material world. They themselves are the dwelling place for the Shekhinah. Before his death, the Baal Shem Tov's father instructed him, remember, my child, that God is with you. Never let this thought out of your mind. go deeper and deeper into every hour, every minute, and in every place. Deeply affected, the Besh later remarked, my father's words remained fixed in my mind and engraved in my heart. After his death, it became my practice to go into seclusion in the forests and mountains for the purpose of reinforcing this thought in my mind, that the glory of God fills the world and is actually with me at every moment. Melo kol haaretz kivodo. God's presence fills everything. I thought I'd play you a few minutes of this Craig Taubman song, just a few minutes.
Every second, every minute, every hour, every day, everything, everyone, every place, every way, where you walk, where you stand, where you love, where you praise, all of life is holy ground. Every he, every she, every what, every who, it's in her, it's in them, it's in me, it's in you, in the bitter, in the sweet, in the calm, in the storm. All of life is holy ground. So walk as if it's holy ground. Breathe as if it's all around. Talk and make a holy sound. Take your shoes off, you're on holy ground. When
Well, that's lovely, right? And I write, but. In my experience, I don't have that constant feeling. Sometimes I play that song to get myself to that place a little more, actually a lot. And other times, sometimes I have to push myself to open in a way that allows me to see or experience the holiness of a given moment. And so earlier I said sometimes things just break through, and then sometimes I have to choose to call something holy. I have to use my call, my voice, my choice to call something holy. So I thought I would just say a little bit more about that and then come to a close. Sometimes in life, I think we have experiences we can't quite recognize the holiness of. They could be moments we experience of ordinary, or ones that we experience as sad, or ones that are we have fear, in which we have fear or regret or grief. I think a sense of holiness of life can be masked by grief, and it can be masked by stress or anxiety or exhaustion or busyness, but that doesn't remove its presence. There's this wonderful story about a person who goes to their rabbi and is crying, and I don't know if you know the story, but the rabbi says, look, I can't tell you how to make those tears go away, but I can show you how to see them as holy. So if indeed all of life is holy, how do we do that? How do we come to see it, even when we don't feel it right away? I think I'll just say two things about that, and then I really will wrap. I think one of the ways that happens for me is I listen for the call. I listen for the call to Mama Daka. the soft, quiet voice. We sing it on Rosh Hashanah. We say the shofar sounds and we hear the soft voice that is shooting through the ordinary and trying to speak to us and whisper and say, this is holy too. We need to stop, to look, to listen, to slow down, to pause, to notice. Orthodox Union says that Kedushah, holiness, is really about separating the general, I'd say the broad strokes, from the very specific, the small. Rabbi Shefa Golds invites us to practice spiritual practices that awaken our sense of holiness regarding the details of our daily lives, that we may enter through them into communion with God. How do we listen and slow down? And the second way this works for me, when I do that, I find it so much easier to hear that voice. I don't know if others do, but so much easier. And the second way is to become the voice, to become determined to see things as holy, as luminous. Sometimes I just need to declare them as such. I need to be an angel saying, holy, 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 because I don't think even those angels are only responding to an experience of holiness. I think they are deciding to transform and to point out and to declare. The other day, my father, who had been not very responsive for a while, he's been in and out. I said, Dad, and he hasn't really been eating. And I said, Dad, I brought you some pastrami. And he popped in and he looked at me with such intent. It was like he was saying, where have you been all my life? And are you serious? Pastrami? And this gratitude and this love. And then the next word he uttered was sweetheart. And I felt this sting, this very strong sting. I was so happy and so sad. And I looked back later in that day and thought, wow, that was a holy moment. It was so full of everything. How much my father loved pastrami and how much he grew up in Brooklyn and how much he loved me and how much he was so happy to be seen and how much he really wanted to eat it and how sad I was that I was losing him and how beautiful it was that I had him in that moment. Kuf is the shelter of holiness and the coal that draws down holiness into our awareness. Isaiah says, Kol omer kra, va'ani omer ma ekra. Kol, a voice with a kuf, says kra, speak, say something with a kuf. And I say, what shall I say? My prayer is that in this coming year we are granted the vision to see and the voice to say, Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. Holy, holy, holy. That is an invitation.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing all this Kedushah with us. To share your call, to make sure that through your sanctity we become a makeilah, a choir, where we all as a community can sing God's praises. And also you remind me of this Kadeshenu b'mitzvotecha. May it be that the sanctity is brought by our actions, and that's why Shirat HaNefesh is committed to Shavat Aniyim Ata Tishma, the clamor of the poor you will hear. Because we believe that this is also the way that God help us become more holy or achieve a higher level of holiness. And what you bring to our lives is purely that, Kedushah. And may it be that the next time we meet, we can bring our Kiddush cup together and celebrate and sanctify the day and sanctify the hour. And now that we are in the middle of the Aseret Yemei Teshuvah, the 10 days of repentance, and we are thinking about our lives, may it be that when we do the accounting of our souls, we can capture some of the Kedushah that you are guiding us to take. It's really very impressive of this Selihot programs have done, with every one of you being a source of light towards a place that sometimes feels a little bit like choshech, like darkness, but each one of your words and the words of everyone else that have been here and come is adding a little bit of light to our existence. So we invite everybody to come on Sunday as we take a little break all the way for Shabbat. And for this Shabbat Shuvah, the Shabbat of my Bar Mitzvah, I invite everyone to come as we're going to discuss what does it mean Teshuvah in the 20th anniversary of September 11th. And then continue on all the way to Yom Kippurim. And then for Mincha to bring the voices of many of you to wrap up the Selihot series and Selihot ideas and Selihot mood. And may will be sealed in the book of life. Thank you so much. I know this is not where you probably would have liked to be, but I hope that by teaching us, it would give some solace to your heart, some moment of that called Mama Daka that you were asking for.
Exactly where I wanted to.
So from here, we send you all our love, the wishes that everything would be as peaceful as it can be, and that we will return bismachot, right, in great happiness. Until then, I invite everybody to have a Shabbat, a restoring Shabbat, a Shabbat of shlemut, of wholeness, a Shabbat shalom, and that hopefully we'll meet again as we will pour our hearts for Yom Kippur. Until then, thank you everyone, Laila Tov, and we'll see you very soon. Good night.
Laila Tov.
Laila Tov.
Right.